It's the timeline that keeps me up at night. 2.5 hours. In modern warfare, specifically in the context of hypersonic missiles and stealth aircraft, 2.5 hours isn't a window, it's an eternity. It's enough time to evacuate a city, let alone a single compound.
Exactly. It's enough time to drive from the center of Tehran to the Caspian Sea if the roads are clear. And yet, the result was total devastation.
That's the question everyone is asking, but I don't think they're framing it right. We know China provided the tracking data. We know they saw the F-35S take off. So, how do you have the supreme leader and 40 of his top commanders sitting in one room, waiting for a strike they had a written invitation for?
That is the single most frightening question for Beijing right now. Forget the geopolitics for a second and look at the mechanics. China gave Iran the keys to the kingdom. They provided anti-stealth radar specifically tuned for the F-35 signature. They were streaming real-time flight paths of Israeli jets crossing Iraq. They didn't just say incoming, they gave speed, altitude, and vector. And despite that, the leadership was decapitated.
So, if you're sitting in Beijing or Moscow today, you're not thinking, our technology failed.
No, you're thinking something much worse. You're thinking, our technology worked perfectly, but the client is compromised. The Chinese ambassador used the word shocking at the UN. Not outrageous, but shocking. That's the language of bewilderment. They realized that the intelligence reached Tehran, entered the chain of command, and then stopped. Someone in that chain made a deliberate decision to ensure those 40 commanders stayed in their seats.
Which implies a level of penetration that is frankly terrifying for the alliance. If I'm Russia, and I'm sharing satellite data with Iran, am I actually just CCing the CIA?
Precisely. That's why the silence from the East is so deafening right now. Intelligence analysts believe Beijing and Moscow are currently conducting emergency reviews of every single system they've shared. They have to assume that every digital handshake, every shared radar feed, is being watched by Western intelligence. Until they identify the mole, the senior insider, who orchestrated that meeting, they can't help Iran. Any aid they send is effectively compromised before it crosses the border.
It reminds me of the old Cold War paranoia, but accelerated. And looking at the history here, Soleimani in Baghdad, Haniyeh in Tehran, there is a pattern.
It's the same playbook. Technology doesn't kill these targets. Human intelligence does. You don't hit a specific room in a specific compound at a specific minute by guessing. Someone knew the schedule. Someone knew the attendees. And in this case, someone knew that despite the Chinese warning, the meeting had to go ahead. To lose 40 commanders in a single minute isn't a military defeat. It's an institutional betrayal.
And that betrayal pushes us into this new phase. I've heard military strategists throwing around the term death ground. It sounds dramatic, but it's actually a very specific technical concept, isn't it?
It's straight from Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Death ground is the terrain where a force fights when retreat is impossible, when the only options are victory or total annihilation. When an army is on death ground, they fight with a ferocity that is impossible to calculate or predict because they have abandoned the fear of death.
And that's where Iran is right now.
That is exactly where they are. You have a nation declaring 40 days of mourning, a new leader being selected while the capital is literally under fire, and the Strait of Hormuz conditionally closed. They aren't calculating cost-benefit ratios anymore. They are operating on pure existential survival. That makes them incredibly dangerous.
It explains the ferocity we're seeing. I mean, look at the Gulf states. They've spent hundreds of billions on Western air defense Patriots, THAAD systems, and yet we're seeing footage of Jebel Ali port burning.
That's the other tragedy here. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, they are the collateral damage of a war they tried desperately to prevent. Their silence is heavy. They can't publicly condemn the US because America is their security guarantor, but privately, they are watching their multi-billion-dollar defense shields fail to stop the Iranian waves. They are watching their infrastructure take the heat for an American operation.
It's a nightmare scenario for them. And speaking of the American operation, the political situation in Washington is confusing, to say the least. We have a president who is bombing a country while simultaneously agreeing to talk to them.
It's unprecedented. You have Trump giving an interview to The Atlantic saying, "I will be talking to them," just 36 hours into the largest air campaign in 2 decades. Usually, you fight to force negotiations. Here, the offer to negotiate is happening while the missiles are still in the air. It completely destabilizes the narrative. Are we seeking regime change or just a better deal?
And the cost is rising. We went from no casualties to CENTCOM confirming 3 American service members dead. That changes the math at home instantly.
It changes everything. No casualties allows a war to stay in the background of the news cycle. 3 flag-draped coffins do not. That confirmation forces Congress to get involved. It forces the public to pay attention. And remember, this was launched without congressional authorization based on intelligence that even some insiders are calling unsupported.
It feels like we are walking a tightrope over a very deep canyon. We have oil prices, Brent crude, heading toward $120, insurance giants refusing to cover Gulf shipping, and a nuclear power backed into a corner.
And don't forget the timeline. We are in the 40 days. In Shia Islam, the 40-day mourning period, Arbaeen, is culturally massive. It's a period of grieving, yes, but also of gathering strength. The question is, what happens at the end of these 40 days? Does this grief turn into the collapse of the regime, crumbling under the weight of the betrayal? Or does it calcify into a resistance that lasts for another 30 years?
That's the variable nobody can model. Not the CIA, not Beijing.
No algorithm can predict that. But I keep going back to that insider, the person who stopped the warning. That person is still there. They are still embedded in the Iranian command structure. They're watching the funeral processions, watching the strikes, likely sitting in the meetings deciding the retaliation.
That's the most chilling part. The call is coming from inside the house.
And until that line is cut, Iran is fighting blind. China knows it, Russia knows it. That's why the flow of information is stopped. You can give a man a gun, you can give him a radar, but you cannot give him eyes if his own brain is working against him.
So, we watch the streets.
We watch the streets. The next 40 days will determine the future of the Middle East, not just for this year, but for the rest of our lives. If the regime survives this death ground phase, they emerge different, harder, more radical. If they fall, we are looking at a power vacuum that makes 2003 Iraq look like a dress rehearsal.
It's a sobering thought. We're watching history pivot in real time, and most people don't even realize the mechanics of what's happening beneath the surface.
They see the explosions, but they don't see the silence. The silence of the Chinese data streams turning off. The silence of the Gulf leaders realizing they are on their own. And the silence of that mole in Tehran, waiting for the next opportunity.
We'll have to leave it there for today, but we will be tracking this every step of the way. The situation is evolving too fast to look away.
Absolutely. The next few weeks are critical.
Thanks for listening. If you want to understand the reality behind the headlines, you know where to find us. Stay safe.
We will bring more news, and the future is going to be critical. Stay safe.
It's the time